The agenda this week debated new provincial policy for police education and learned why critics worry that Mexican democracy might be slipping. The agenda's weekend review begins with a hotly contested breakup of Peel Region. Have a look.
Just so I'm clear, you like the region of Peel. I mean, you tinker, but it's okay. You like it the way it is. You want a divorce. You want a divorce as well? Brampton wants out too?
So what our position has been, if Mississauga insists on a divorce, then they have to pay the bill. And what the bill is our servicing capacity is already at capacity. We've had 4 housing projects turned down because of a lack of servicing just in recent weeks. To rebuild that servicing capacity is extraordinarily expensive. And so when we built it 50 years ago, the cost of infrastructure was very different. And Mississauga's used up that servicing capacity. There is no vacant land in Mississauga. They've used it up. And now it was the time for Mississauga to pay for new servicing capacity, a new police facility in Brampton, new servicing capacity in Caledon. And just when they're on the hook to pay for this, they're saying, we're going to leave. Good news, the Premier has assured me Mississauga will not be able to run away on their bill.
What's the bill, do you think?
Well,
how much?
To rebuild, to have servicing capacity.
Calm down, Alan. I will get to you in a second.
According to the consultants that the City of Brampton has engaged, the water capacity, the water treatment would be $1 billion. The wastewater would be $3 billion. It'd be $4 billion. Just for Brampton alone, that's not including Caledon. Historically, we've paid a 40% share of the cost of new infrastructure. We paid a 40% cost for the 2 facilities in Mississauga. And the expectation is that Mississauga was going to pay for their share in Brampton. We're talking about, this is a huge,
multiple billions of dollars. And you want him to write a check for that?
Well, legally, they're obligated to.
Okay, let's find out over here. Do you think you owe them some money?
So I don't dispute Mayor Brown's numbers at all. I mean, absolutely, the city of Brampton has contributed 40% of all regional infrastructure for the last 50 years. But conversely, Mississauga has contributed 60%. And has paid the freight for the region appeal for the last 50 years as well, right? So, we can go into a negotiation and understand that there are services that support everybody and that we are going to continue to use those services, and we can have cost share agreements. We already do this with York Region, where we provide them water and wastewater services at a fee that is fair, cost recovery, and done with supervision.
But the issue there is,
we can continue
the issue
doing.
there is that it's used up. You've built up Mississauga. You've used up the servicing capacity. When it's time to build this in Brampton, that's when you're running away on the bill. It's like ordering dinner, eating your meal, and then running away. And so, Steve, my issue is the infrastructure that Alvin's talking about. And I wish Mayor Crombie would be here to speak to it, but the infrastructure that he's talking about is in Mississauga. We built the 2 water treatment plants in Mississauga. The police headquarters is in Mississauga. The infrastructure that Mississauga has paid 60% of, that's in Brampton, are archives we no longer need. The Peel Regional Council chambers we no longer need. That is useless infrastructure that can be
Mayor
sold
Brown,
off.
that's not fair. I mean, we're also paying for roads. We're also paying for all the services for the last 50 years. And this is going to continue to happen. We're going to do this in a service agreement, right?
The council chambers are no longer necessary.
No one is out to gouge anyone else. And no one's out to leave the taxpayer on the hook here for Brampton or Mississauga or Caledon.
Can I just ask you, did you pay in any of this stuff?
Yes, we paid 5%.
Paid 5%.
We did pay 5%, and as again, we are the smaller of the 3 municipalities, but we did pay our share. And really, when we looked at this, the last time we looked at this, we determined that when we look at Brampton and Mississauga, the services that they use in social services, Caledon doesn't need that. Caledon does not use that much in the social services cost. Now, we do have regional roads that we have in Caledon. We've got 12 regional roads, but it was basically a wash. It was a wash because more social services are used in Brampton and Mississauga as opposed to Caledon. So at that point in time, when we looked at the whole regional governance issue and whether or not we should stay the way we are, and we determined that it was best to stay the way we are.
I'm sure you guys have all done polling on this stuff.
Yes.
We got a little bit of polling here, too. In 2019, when the province was reviewing the region, there was some polling done on what people think by Main Street Research. In Mississauga, almost half the people supported separation. About a third wanted to stick with the region. 18% supported a new super city of Peel. In Brampton, about 2/3 wanted things left the way it is, with the region of Peel. Only 8% wanted to separate, and 25% wanted a super city of Peel to amalgamate. In Caledon, 64% preferred the status quo, 20% wanted to separate, and 17% supported amalgamation. And across the region, only 30% of those surveyed supported dissolution, while half want to keep the region, and 21% wanted a super city of Peel. Premier Ford said earlier this week, for the first time, he went on the record and said he has always been in favor of Mississauga having the right to stand on its own 2 feet and have its own way. I didn't know that. Did that come as news to you, incidentally? Because I don't think he'd said that publicly before.
So, he has said before that cities as large as Brampton and Mississauga could stand on their own feet. But in the same press conference he had last week in Brampton, he said that the cost associated with this that would not be left on Brampton's doorstep, and that's a very important principle.
He promised to make you whole, I think, is the way he said it.
Otherwise, it's theft from Brampton residents. We have paid into that infrastructure over 50 years.
Now, you've been campaigning, not you personally, but your city has been campaigning to become the independent Republic of Mississauga
since 2005.
Yeah, I was going to say it's 20 years, and yet only half the people are on side. Are you sure that you are doing what your ratepayers want you to do?
Absolutely. In 2005, when then Mayor McCallion took this to city residents, there was a campaign. It came back 99% in support from residents, sent the city the message that they want to separate and that this would be better for Mississauga residents because the numbers add up that Mississauga residents have been over-contributing to the region and have been subsidizing the other cities. And when you talk about a police model where we're losing or paying more than our fair share,
but that's
where a lot of the savings comes in for the city of Mississauga. But to the mayor's point, the province is talking about making everybody whole to make sure that no one is going to be left out on the
I want to speak to the police point because Mayor Crombie brought up some magical figures she picked out of thin air the other day.
We should say she was invited to be here today. Her schedule wouldn't permit.
But I understand why she wouldn't want to delve into these facts. Facts get in the way with the messaging sometimes. Chief Nish has put on the Peel Region website the calls for service. There is no Mississauga subsidy of Brampton. There's more calls on a per capita basis in Mississauga. There's more auto thefts on a per capita basis in Mississauga. There is no subsidy. That's on the Peel Region Police website. It's on right now the funding allocations on a per capita basis. So when you pick up a figure and it may sound good, it's important that it's rooted in facts, and that's an example of a statistic that's been used by your mayor that is factually incorrect.
It's demonstrably apparent that a better educated officer does better in the field, leads to more positive police-citizen interactions. And it's been particularly questionable over the years that such an important aspect of our society, policing, where there's so much controversy, bad interactions have massive repercussions, that it's one of the few professions where we don't require a university-specific degree program. When you think of other professions, nursing, teaching, architecture, accounting, social work, dentistry, engineering, law, medicine, I could probably think of more. Timothy might have some others on his list as well. I just think that this is a natural progression as we evolve as a society and as the role of policing in society expands exponentially. Policing is now in the social work field, in the psychiatry field. We talk about de-escalating people in mental health crisis, dealing with people that are suffering from substance dependency. And so the job has gotten much more complex than when I started walking the beat in 1985 in Vanier, where that was a very simple mandate, to now a mandate that spans all kinds of different areas and requiring further education that's not delivered at the Ontario Police College or in field training.
Timothy, what about it? Is there an argument to be made that the requirement of a post-secondary degree could constitute a barrier to getting more people into a police service somewhere?
I don't think that's the case. I don't think it's a barrier. And to be fair and to be clear, is that many police services have already moved to require some level of post-secondary education as a minimum requirement for consideration of applications in their service. So that standard in many ways is already the case formally in some police services or informally in the hiring process. So those candidates that apply to police services that only require a high school education, those candidates that have higher levels of formal education fare much better in the hiring process already. So it seems to me that police services see a value in post-secondary education because they are already prioritizing post-secondary education when they're making hiring decisions. If there is, in fact, a concern about barriers, perhaps the solution there is to increase access to post-secondary education. Because that would, in fact, eliminate some of the barriers if those are the concerns.
Let me put that to Mark. What about the idea of, if post-secondary is a barrier, knock down the barrier to post-secondary?
Well, yeah, that's certainly one solution. I think right now, we can't lose sight of the fact that the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police recently said that 10% of recruits at the police college don't have post-secondary education. So we're not talking about a large group of individuals that are becoming police officers that don't have post-secondary education. And I don't know what makeup of the 10% are, but I would, anecdotally, I from my experience, I would say that, those are most likely people who have been in the workforce, perhaps been in the trades, maybe been in the military, who have gained life experience and then now have shifted their focus to policing.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah.
Have you got a post-secondary degree?
I have a diploma I have a 2-year diploma from Fanshawe.
Okay, that's a post-secondary, diploma.
Yes.
Do you think it has been useful to your being a better cop?
Honestly, I don't. I think that I think the training that we receive, I think it's helpful. I think it helped me in the early stages, certainly at the police college. But at it's a very intensive training program and highly regulated that you go through at the Ontario Police College. It's now up to 13 or 14 weeks. Plus, you have regular yearly training as well as ongoing training with whatever the latest that's happening in policing is. And so, I think, in policing, we really are constantly educating our police officers. And, it's a lifelong learning profession where you're always learning the latest updates and the latest training on trends or what's happening in policing. As an example, the opioid pandemic, which we know is so tragically killing so many people across this country on our streets. When I went to police college in 2005, we weren't learning about opioids or drug overdose deaths because it wasn't something that we were dealing with. It's something that evolved over time, and as that issue came to the forefront, we trained our police officers on how to respond to those types
So they are getting training on that now?
Certainly.
I want to go to Timothy on that. How good would you say the current way we train police officers rolls out?
Well, I think to assume that the education that's provided at the Ontario Police College or in-service training, as good as it may be, is sufficient to address the kinds of complex public safety concerns that are facing many, communities in Ontario. I think it's perhaps a little naive. What we know is that police training over the last decade has had to be revamped because it has been, proven to be ineffective at responding to certain kinds of incidents. We know that the kinds of communities and the kinds of places in which policing is taking place, not just individuals who struggle with mental health or addiction issues or people in crisis, but individuals with language barriers, individuals who may have come to reside in Ontario from a vast array of backgrounds. What you get in a post-secondary education is the kinds of really meaningful and important transferable skills that allow you to do those, multiple angles of that job, whether it's communication, understanding, analysis, problem solving, understanding what you don't understand, right? And you can then take those skills and use them to learn and continue your development as a police officer. And I think the point also has to be made here is that having a post-secondary education, having higher levels of formal education is an asset to police officers, period, to their own career development, to their own progression. And so what I think here, again, that is most concerning is to have this debate about whether a post-secondary education is valuable or not is really, the wrong discussion to be having. The question is, how do we equip police officers with the kinds of skills that they need to effectively meet the public safety challenges communities face?
Well, let me just begin by asserting my own personal stake in this. Unlike your other guests, I don't have a personal connection to life in Mexico, but I was present at the beginning of the transition to multi-party democracy. In the elections of 2000 in Mexico, for the power transitioned from a president of one party to a president of another party by means of a free and fair, peaceful election, something that had never before happened in the nearly 200-year history of the Mexican state. That miraculous, breathtaking event was honored by a visit to the White House by the incoming president, Vicente Fox, in the fall of 2001. And I remember seeing him on the south lawn of the White House. I was working there at the time, and being in a big crowd of well-wishers and excited people. And this was part of the global democratic transformation that we so admired in those days. But this one was especially intimate because it was so close at hand. And Mexico is a country that has so many opportunities, but has had such struggles. In the year 2000 and 2001, it really seemed like a page had been turned, and Mexico was going on its way to catch up to the developed world. If the Mexican economy had grown from the time Mexico entered NAFTA in the middle 1990s until now, at even a quarter the speed of the Chinese economy over those years, Mexico would now be looking very like a country in Southern Europe, that level of development. And that's the heartbreaking thing. What are we afraid of now in Mexico? When you talk about the subversion of democracy, it may conjure up the idea of some kind of authoritarian dictatorship. That's not really the thing to worry about the most. The thing to worry about the most is that in his attempt to snuff out democratic institutions, the current president, Lopez Obrador, is going to weaken even further the already weak Mexican state and lose power to criminal organizations. Mexico has always suffered from a weak state, a state that can't make its authority run, that can't protect people, that can't collect taxes. Democracy is a huge asset for a state. It gives the state legitimacy. It answers the question, well, why should I pay your taxes? Well, you voted for it. That's why you should pay the taxes. If Lopez Obrador continues to do unto Mexico what he's been doing, you could see not a return to the kind of heavy-handed authoritarianism of the past, but to a breakdown of authority that opens the way to all kinds of criminal elements who already are so present in so many areas of Mexico's territory.
But Lorena, just a quick follow-up. Nobody's concerned that he's going to change the law and allow himself to run for another term. Are people concerned about that?
He is not seeking re-election. What he has done, as David has said, he's been dismantling a lot of counterweight powers. The autonomous institutions that used to regulate the energy sector, the telecom sector. Lopez Obrador is a president who does not like limits. He does not like external limits. He does not like oversight. He does not tolerate criticism. And even from the press, like he has been systematically attacking the press. Since he controlled Congress for the first half of his term, then he was very happy with the way he was passing laws. He lost the constitutional majority after the midterm elections, and this put him in a different mindset. So what he has tried to do right now is completely dismantle the National Electoral Institute, which was the safeguard of our democracy. This institution was approved by the majority of the population. It has run elections freely and fairly. It has supervised elections. These elections are conducted by the citizens, and it has even managed to succeed in conducting elections in states that have been plagued by organized crime, like Tamaulipas. So it has been a very successful element of democracy.
But Lorena, let me jump in on that for a second, because I know that you're a pollster, so you will appreciate this. Morning Consult, which is an organization that did polling around the world, they polled 22 countries. He's the third most popular leader in the world, behind only Modi of India and Berset of Switzerland. I mean, he's over 60%. Joe Biden and Justin Trudeau would give their eye teeth for those kinds of numbers. What makes him so popular?
But in Mexico, we have to look at our history. In Mexico, most presidents are popular. Since 2000, which is what we consider a democratic period, since Vicente Fox, even since 1994 with Cedillo, where we had our first divided government, etc., Most presidents have been around high 50s, low 60s. The only exception was Enrique Peña Nieto, the president who was former to Lopez Obrador. So in Mexico, we have to put those numbers in context. That does not mean that he has a blank check to do whatever he wants. And that's why we have seen a lot of opposition. We saw him have a very important electoral defeat in 2021, not only in the congressional elections, but in specific cities and in Mexico City and in the state of Mexico. So we have to put that in perspective. For advanced democracies, for industrial democracies, these are high numbers. In Mexico, and generally, presidents are well liked. We are very lenient with our presidents, and we don't have re-election. So, that doesn't necessarily turn into electoral numbers. Ernesto Zedillo, who had high approval ratings, had to turn over power to Vicente Fox, which was from a different party, and Felipe Calderón had to do the same. He turned over to the PRI. So we have to put that in context.
Understood. Gustavo, can he say that he has improved the lives of the average Mexican citizen?
Well, it really depends on which dimension we're talking about. David mentioned earlier some of the challenges that Mexico faces, and I think he's correct in pointing these out. But it's also worth, as Lorena mentioned, taking a longer view. And many of these challenges have been around much before Lopez Obrador, right? Some of them, the issue of crime or immigration or the trade relationship with the U.S. These are challenges that are ongoing, and some of them become more or less salient depending on the presidential period. I think it's safe to say that there are important sectors of the population that truly believe that there has been an improvement in the way things are going.
That's just some of what we covered this week. You can find more, including the full conversations, on our website, TVO.org, our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, or our Twitter feed, twitter.com/theagenda.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.